your minds into thinking mode and let's get started. So, who am I? I'm Phill Fox and I'm going to be presenting for you today. But more importantly, there's a lot more things that we should do. I'm from Adaptavist. Probably don't need to tell you who Adaptavist are, but I will do because if not, the marketing folks will tell me off. So Adaptavist, the makers of ScriptRunner, but we do lots more as well. And so today I'm going to be talking about powering up your problem management with ScriptRunner. And I'm going to be aided and abetted. He's sitting in the background. Bobby Bailey is going to do his best to answer every single question that you throw at him in the chat channel. So keep him busy. He's there to help you. I'm going to be presenting and he's going to field every question and answer. Oh, what's happened? My screen's broken. Oh, is this an incident? Is this a problem? Who knows? So let's take it through and let's think about the story so far. Let's think about what do we actually mean when we talk about problem management. What is problem management? Well, we're all familiar with incidents, things like the broken screen that you just saw, things like systems that no longer work. Many people will have also set up automated alerts, things that can make sure that you know about a problem long before it gets to your end users. But what they actually are, incidents and alerts, are both examples of single occurrences of, okay, Bobby's saying that my screen hasn't updated. Let me go back. For the benefit of the recording, I will go back to here and we'll just run through. So for the benefit of the recording, apologies to anybody who hears this twice. I'm here to talk about powering up your problem management with ScriptRunner. And I'm aided and abetted by Bobby, who's going to be manning the chat channels and answering your questions as we go live. So here we have a broken screen, but a broken screen is not great. A broken screen is actually what we would think of as an incident. And that incident is really important because that's a single occurrence of something that has gone wrong. But we set up monitoring tools that will also trigger alerts to make sure we pick things up before it becomes a big problem or before it impacts our end user customers. And then we have the problems. But even when we have fixed a problem, we may have fixed the root cause, but there can be things that we need to fix off the back of it. So we may need to take remedial actions. And so what I've done here is I've talked a little bit about the setup for a typical problem management. It's not the only setup. It's not necessarily the perfect setup. It is a setup, and you can set it up however you wish. We do need to make sure we have definitions, though, so that everybody is clear on what each thing is that we're tracking. Incident and problem are taken straight from JSM in this instance. An alert represents an issue that is raised by an external monitoring system. And I'm drawing on the ITIL 4 practices here of incident and problem management. And a remedial action is something which you take to remedy something after you've fixed the underlying problem, just to recover from that situation, completely on a different timeline. You might also want to have things like root cause analysis, using 5 whys and all the other approaches to check things out. So what we need to remember, though, is that these issue types have a relationship. And the relationship in this instance is quite simple. Incidents and alerts are caused by problems, and problems are related to the remedial actions that needed to fix them. So we're going to start looking at this and think about how can we make some of our manual activities a little better. So I'm going to run through a few things today. I'm going to look at 5 different potential automations. And that's from all the different ones that you could do. I'm going to be demonstrating them primarily with ScriptRunner for Jira. I'm not going to be showing you many scripts today. I'm going to be showing you the outcomes of those scripts. We will let you put your name and contact details into the chat. We'll harvest that, any email addresses, and we'll send you a full set of instructions after. Some of these you could achieve, though, with standard Atlassian automation tools. Why am I focusing on the ScriptRunner for Jira approach? Well, it's more customizable. But if the out-of-the-box works for you, not a problem. Go and use that. The aim of my session today is to inspire you. It's not to give you here is a single point solution, is to actually inspire you to think about what manual activity can we do better, quicker, more efficiently, more effectively, and how will it make my life easier? Now, I've already used a lot of JSM terms and a lot of JSM and ITSM interactions. So don't forget that Atlassian has a microsite devoted to all things ITSM. And it goes by the catchy name of Atlassian.com/ITSM. And there's a brilliant resource in there, a white paper called The Complete Guide for Atlassian's ITSM. I see Bobby's doing a brilliant job keeping up with me and dropping the links into the chat. So hopefully you're finding those are useful. So let's start. And I want people now to actually put themselves as they are a support manager in their organization. And you're going to triage an incident or an alert if you wish. So I ask you the following question. Can you pull the current problems and the recently resolved ones? Okay, so all of you, I want you to think about how you would do this in your system. If you've got a multi-screen, you may even want to have a go at doing it. So those of you who've got your screen set up and have got your software desk, your service desk open, ready, set, go. So clock's already ticking down. Can you beat that clock to give us a message in the chat when you have your list? Now, many of you are wondering, why do we not just look at all problems? Why are we only looking at current problems plus the recently resolved? Well, if you enable people to look at all problems, what are you going to see? You're going to see ones from 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. Is a closed problem from 10 years ago going to be the problem and the root cause of the incident that you're dealing with at the moment? Probably not. But why would you not look at just the current problems? Well, I'm sure, just like me, you've all had a Friday when everything has just gone wrong. And something went wrong at 5 p.m. and you went, oh, I can't deal with this now. I've got to sort all this other stuff out before I go home. And so you leave it till the next week. You get around to reporting the issue, but the problem that caused that issue has actually already been solved. And that's why we look at the recently resolved as well. And so I'm giving you a simple JQL here. Issue type equals problem. So we're just restricting it to looking at the problems. You might also want to restrict it to only certain project spaces. That's absolutely fine. And then we're looking at a combination of an empty resolution, meaning it's not yet solved, or a resolution date greater than 5 days ago, which means that it'll show us anything that's been resolved in the last 5 days. So when we talk about triaging, how do we speed up triage? What do we mean when we talk about triage? Well, triage is your first line support. It's the people who will pick up that problem, that incident, that alert, and try to deal with it straight away. And what you've got to do with these is literally be ready for anything that comes in. So let's think about what are the 4 outcomes. The 4 outcomes is the first line already know the answer, and so they can resolve it. It might be that it's an existing problem, and so they can link it to an existing problem. It might be an earlier resolved problem, and so they want to think about, well, how do we link it to a new instance of that earlier resolved problem? And it might be a completely new problem. Now, there's ways we can speed this up. So let's just think about one possible solution. And I'm not saying this is the only solution. I'm going to talk about here about you've just had that JQL, you've just got your results. So you now know what are the current and recently resolved problems. So now when you go into linking to an existing or recently resolved problem, put a self-referencing transition link on that initial open status or whatever status you're using. Add to the transition screen just the link field. Then using the information from the JQL search, you can quickly select that right problem ticket. And so what you get is something which, again, just speeds up that process. What we've done is we've reduced the time it takes people to find what are the current known problems and recently resolved. And we've given you a way of quickly attaching an incident or an alert to that problem. So that's great, where we already know about the problem. But what about those times when it isn't an existing problem? And what you've got is you've got other problems that you want to report. So remember that we said we want to create a new problem. So let's think about the manual approach to this. The manual approach to creating a new problem. Okay, you could clone the incident or alert. You can then find that clone. You can do some editing of that clone and the content. You can then move the clone to the problem issue type and then create a link between the original incident alert and the problem. Now, even me describing that sounds quite tedious and painful and manual. So how can we make it a single operation bullet? Sorry, a single operation button. A single operation button is like we can see on the screen here, where we have the create problem button. And that create problem button is, for those of you who want the techie answer, is what's called a constrained issue creation action. And that's part of what comes out of ScriptRunner. And Bobby has already put the link into this chat, so you can see where you can find the documentation on that. But sometimes we want to do other things. We want to be able to communicate workarounds. There's nothing worse than reporting an incident and getting no or little feedback. Then you talk to a colleague and they say, oh, yeah, did you hear about such and such a workaround? They told me that on my ticket. So what we actually want to do is we want to make sure that when everyone is impacted by a problem, all of the incidents get the reported workaround. Now, I will flag here, there is a standard JSM automation that will copy a workaround from problem to an associated ticket. But what that does is it overwrites content. And what we find with many organizations, they want an audit trail. They want to know not only what is the workaround that's currently communicated, but what has previously been communicated. And so we have one problem linking to many. And here we can see the workaround has been published to the problem ticket. Very simple, reload the screen to display the missing items. However, if we look at an incident that's associated with that, and yes, this is an old set of dates, so we've got 2016 back there, you can see that there were 3 updates to that incident workaround. Again, it's just taking that next level, just thinking about not only what is useful to me today, but what is useful for me when I review and how do I improve. So I'm very conscious that I'm rushing through these at speed. Any questions from anybody, make sure you drop them in the chat. Bobby will do his best to answer them and he'll ping me a list at the end. So what about scale? What about when your problem is going through the roof? Anybody who's ever been involved in any major incident know just how quickly the noise of new tickets being created and trying to deal with everything that's coming in can swamp a resolution team. So in this example, what we're going to do is we're going to look at one way we can reduce that noise somewhat without losing focus on the continued challenge of a rapidly growing problem. So I titled this When Links Become Unusable. By this, I mean the number of links has become so large that you have no real understanding of the scale of the issue. On this slide, we see a small problem. It's already got 4 related tickets. Now imagine that that was not 4, but 400. How would you truly understand that scale? And how would you realize it had grown to that number? Because let's face it, once you get over 10 or 15 links, 16, 17, 20, 30, 40, 500, it feels like the same thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the ScriptRunner for Jira scripted fields. And here we're going to have 2 scripted fields that just count up how many linked alerts and how many linked incidents. And we display those numbers onto the ticket. So we're going to use the power of Fibonacci. And the power of Fibonacci is really important because, yes, it's very pretty. You can see seashells. You can see lots of things in nature that have a Fibonacci series. And a Fibonacci series, for any of you who've done Agile and story points, are probably very familiar with it. It's the 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34 style of counting and going up. So what we're going to do is we can use that Fibonacci series along with the linked alerts and that calculated to actually provide messages onto the problem ticket when we reach those thresholds. So rather than telling the key people every single time a ticket is linked, we tell them at ever increasing intervals. So they still know it's escalating, and they still know that it's growing, but it gives them time to breathe and time to solve. And again, you can use that very quickly to actually reduce the amount of noise that you're getting. So I'm going to come now to another example. And throughout all of this, what I'm trying to do is just get you to think about different aspects of your problem and incident management and where you can improve it. And so we're going to talk about communication. Now, I'm sure many of you have your favorite instant messenger service. I could mention Slack and HipChat for those of you with a memory. So Slack, Teams are what many of you will be using. For the purpose of this, I'm going to actually use Slack. And again, we're going to do a little bit of audience participation, and I want you to think this through. So on the next slide, I want you to think about this, and please go ahead and have a go at doing it yourself in your personal channel on Slack or Teams, right? The challenge that you're going to be set is choose your instant messenger of choice. I want you to announce a new major incident, and I want you to do it in a standard format and use the information from Jira that you can see on screen. So I want to know that it's a new major incident declared for an issue. I want to know which issue. I want to know which summary. I want to know who reported it. I want you to put a description in, and I want you to give me a couple of Slack channels, one for the war room and one for the stakeholders. So there we go. There's your challenge. Ready? Clock's ticking. So we've set the clock off already, and it's counting down. So you're going to into your Slack channel, you're going into Teams, you're creating a message in a channel. Oh, you created the message, you've got the content in. Brilliant. You're doing really well. There's not a lot of time left. Now you're creating 2 new discussion channels. Oh, what did he say I had to call them? I can't remember what the names were. Oh, it was a stakeholder name. Oh, yeah, it was a war room as well. Got to create those channels. Going to create those channels. Right, I've now got that done. I've got the message up. Oh, I've got to update the Jira ticket to put that information back in. Now I put that information back in. What else do we need to do? Oh, crumbs, we've run out of time. Okay, so what do you get by automating that process? Well, not only do you save time, you get consistency. And consistency means that people have less time to get up to speed at a time that is particularly stressful. Now, imagine that you didn't name the stakeholders channel in a way that was familiar, and people had to spend their time looking for it. That is actually going to give you less of a problem. And at this point, fingers crossed forward. Okay, fingers crossed for me. We're going to try and do a live demo. So just bear with me while I get the right screens visible. So if somebody can tell me that you can now see Slack and you can see a problem. Somebody just give me
we can't see Slack.
Can you see the Jira instance?
No, we're still on your presentation.
Okay, I'm just going to change my share. So bear with me a second. All right, looks like I'm not able to share screens on here. Okay, all right. I was going to do it as a live demo. We will still do it as a live demo, but it means I've got to jump around between different window shares. Not a problem. Okay. I'm assuming that everybody can see a Jira Service Management entry. Everybody,
yes.
Good. Thank you. Okay. So here I have a problem. Okay. And on this problem, at the moment, we have an action button called declare a major incident. So I'm going to declare a major incident. And I'm just going to say today. So I could retrospectively declare it for yesterday, or if I wanted to, but I'm going to declare it for today. So now when I click on that declare major incident, a workflow has happened, and what's happened is it's transitioned, and you'll see not only has I get the message back that the ticket has been updated, but I get a new couple of entries. So I get that I have 2 stakeholder rooms have been set up, and they're set up. I also have a message that those channels have been set up. So what have we done? We've sent some message to Slack, which we'll look at in a second, and we've created 2 new Slack channels associated with this ticket. So let me now swap my share so that I now share what we saw in Slack. And so here we go into Slack, and we can see in the major incidents channel, we now have that announcement, and that information has been shared across. That information has been shared across, so we now know that we've actually got a major incident has been declared, and it's been announced to all the people who monitor that major incident channel. But it also tells us that there are 2 new channels that have been set up. So let's just have a look in our channels. Okay, so I'm going to look at all the channels, and this was EE21. Oops. And so if I look at for EE21, we can see that there is a war room and there is a stakeholder room. Now, obviously, I could do lots more with this. I could take that process and I could invite people to the specific channels. I can take it and I can make sure that messages go out in an email to inviting people to join those channels. Lots of things that you can do. So now I'm going to swap back to the presentation. So hopefully we go back to the live demo slide, which is nicely blank. I'm going to skip the next slide. And okay, so that was the not so live demo. That showed you what we saw. But let's just take this the next thought. I've shown you a very, very simple interaction and interface to an API. If any system has an API, Jira, with the use of ScriptRunner for Jira, can access those APIs and can pull information in and send information out, which is really important and helpful for you. But don't think of it and restrict it just on what I've shown. Think about how could you automate from a Jira custom field? What happens when the impact milestones that we use the Fibonacci series? Could you push that into the Slack channel or your Teams channel? What about when a workaround is published? Should that be mentioned to the stakeholders that a workaround has now been published? Removes that pressure from your communication manager. When you publish a workaround, you can automatically tell the stakeholders at this time a workaround has been published. But remember that that communication manager is also working on your system. So if you've got communications that are going out to stakeholders and you're putting it into a custom field, why not send a reminder to the communication manager when the time of the next expected communication is approaching? What happens when the problem is resolved? Well, you want to archive the channels so that they're not there. So there's a few ideas. Please do drop other ideas into the chat of other things that you've thought of. I'm trying to do this to inspire. I'm not trying to do this so you copy me. I want to inspire you to think of what helps. But we all know at the end of the day, it all comes down to money. And it comes down to, I could do all these wonderful things, but what does it actually help and make me do? So what you need to do is you need to think about what drives a good investment. Well, not surprisingly, one, and it is only one of the metrics, is to look at the time it takes to implement versus the time that you save. But don't forget the other metrics. Don't forget things like speed to resolve, accuracy of resolution, ability to do things better, customer satisfaction, just to name a few other metrics that you should consider. So on here, I took some information where we did this with a couple of companies, and I've generalized their numbers so that it's not, you cannot clearly identify any particular company. So down the right-hand side, I've got, they had 1,000 incidents alerts each annum, per annum. So if you take that, that means that they had roughly 4 every working day. Doesn't sound a lot, but that's a conservative estimate. 60% of those got resolved straight away by first line. 20% were repeat incidents and repeat problems. So they ended up with about 200 problems every year. And those 40 problems were escalated as well. So what we've got here is, in the first column, we've got the little tricks that I've shown you, the time that it's saved for in that, and how many times per year was that saved. So we total all that up and we can see that implementing those 5 little tricks there at a very conservative level saves 33.5 hours per year of time. So do the equation. Can you implement them in less than 33.5 days? Sorry, less than 33.5 hours, not days. If you can, then you're going to get that paid off within a year. Now, let's just say you had double the number of tickets. So that would mean you would pay it off in 6 months. You have quadruple, 3 months, etc. So you can do that calculation. You can work out how much time should I invest. So I've done a very quick run through. We would love you to tell us which of these things has really grabbed your attention, and we'd love you to just drop into the chat or the Q&A. Use the hash symbol. So literally tell us, was it the triage process that got your attention? Was it escalations? Was it workarounds? Was it scaling? Was it communicating? Which of those has really fired you up and got you thinking, I want to do that in my instance? And I see I've got one question to answer. So while people are telling us what they got, what was the question?
Do you want me to?
Yes,
Yeah, you.
I found it. It's all right. Go on then, Bobby. You can read it out.
Can the scripted field, will the scripted field be available for changes when behaviors is added to cloud?
Okay. Oh, now there's a wonderful in-depth question. So let's tease that out a bit. So many of you know that at the moment, ScriptRunner for Jira Cloud doesn't have behaviors. So let me give you the good news first of all. It's just about to be released. We're looking for people to beta, and there is a link that's in our chat where you can go and you can get the latest details, keep yourself informed. So cloud behaviors on their way. Initially, that is going to be primarily looking at the create screen and dealing with that, because that's what we've got available from Atlassian. Going forward, will you be able to interact with custom fields and scripted fields and all the other fields that are there? That is definitely our intention, but it's not going to be there at first release. Sorry to build it up and say, yeah, it's coming, and then say, but not giving you everything up front. The reason is that we're restricted to what we have access to, and we have to work with Atlassian to get that access and make sure it's all safe and secure, because you don't want your information to be shared out inappropriately with anybody else. So yes, behaviors is coming. Yes, we intend to give you similar functionality to on-premise to enable you to interact and work with your custom fields. Okay, I've pinged through a lot of stuff here. Hopefully that's given you all something to think about. Do get in touch. There's my LinkedIn details. Mention JiraCon 22. Tell us what you found was useful. And if we've no more questions from myself and Bobby, thank you all for attending. And thanks, Bobby, for doing all the stuff in the chat channel and putting that, all those links and everything in as I ran through at such a speed. So thank you very much for being part. If you've got follow-up questions, do come and see us on our booth. Send an email to us at hello@adaptavist.com. Tag us in social media, whatever you want. And you've got a few minutes before the closing session. Thank you very much.